Imagine living in a world where the ground beneath your feet is constantly shifting. One day, you are the most respected advisor to a king, living in a palace with access to every book ever written. The next, you are a fugitive, disguised as a common traveler, fleeing through the desert under the cover of night because the dynasty that protected you has collapsed. This was the life of a man named Ibn Sina, known to many of us as Avicenna. He lived in a time of incredible intellectual light, but that light was surrounded by the shadows of war, political betrayal, and constant instability. His story is not just about what he knew, but about how he managed to keep thinking and writing when the world around him was falling apart. Avicenna was born in 980 near Bukhara, in what we now know as Uzbekistan. From the very beginning, it was clear he was different. His father was a government official who made sure his son had the best education possible, exposing him to everything from Indian mathematics to Greek logic. By the time he was 10 years old, he had memorized the entire Quran. By his early teens, he had mastered law and philosophy. He later wrote that learning came to him with an ease that was almost strange, but he was also honest about the moments when he hit a wall. One of the most famous stories from his youth involves Aristotle's Metaphysics. He read the book 40 times. He literally memorized every word on every page until he could recite the entire thing from heart, but he still did not understand what the author was trying to say. He felt a deep, gnawing frustration that many of us feel when we are trying to learn something that feels just out of reach. He even began to doubt his own intelligence. It was only by chance, when he bought a cheap commentary in a market for a few coins, that the meaning finally clicked. This moment changed him. It taught him that genius alone is not enough. Understanding requires a patient reconstruction of ideas, and sometimes you need a different perspective to see the truth. By the age of 18, he had already become a master of medicine. He did not see it as a difficult science, but rather as a practical tool to help people. His big break came when he successfully treated a ruling prince whose own doctors were baffled by his illness. As a reward, Avicenna did not ask for gold or titles. He asked for access to the royal library. This library was a treasure trove of ancient knowledge, filled with texts from Greece, Persia, and India. For Avicenna, this was his true university. He spent his days and nights there, absorbing everything, synthesizing different traditions into a single, coherent view of the world. But this period of peace did not last. The political landscape of Central Asia was a mess of rising and falling dynasties. When the Samanid Empire fell, Avicenna's life of quiet study ended forever. He became a nomad, moving from city to city, looking for a ruler who would value his mind enough to protect him. He served as a physician, a government administrator, and even a vizier, which is essentially a prime minister. But power is a dangerous thing. In one city, he would be celebrated as a hero, and in the next, he would be thrown into a dungeon because he was suspected of political conspiracy. What is truly remarkable is that Avicenna never stopped writing. He wrote some of his most important works while he was in hiding, or even while he was in prison. He did not have the luxury of a quiet office or a steady supply of paper. He dictated his thoughts to his students while they were traveling on horseback or sitting by a campfire. He wrote the Canon of Medicine, a book that would become the standard medical textbook in both the Islamic world and Europe for over 600 years. He organized all known medical knowledge into a system that combined theory with actual observation. He was one of the first to understand that diseases could be spread through water and soil, and he emphasized the importance of hygiene and diet long before they were common concepts. At the same time, he was building a massive philosophical system. He wanted to explain everything, from the nature of God to the way the human soul works. He made a famous distinction between essence and existence, arguing that while we can imagine things like a phoenix or a giant, they do not necessarily exist. Only one being, God, exists by necessity. Everything else in the universe depends on something else to be real. This might sound like abstract academic talk, but for Avicenna, it was a way to find order in a chaotic world. If he could understand the underlying logic of the universe, then the political chaos of his daily life felt less overwhelming. However, the strain of this lifestyle eventually caught up with him. Avicenna was a man of extremes. He worked relentlessly, often staying up all night to study, and he was known to indulge in the pleasures of life with the same intensity. He was aware that his body was breaking down, but he refused to slow down. He once said that he preferred a short life with width to a narrow one with length. He continued to advise rulers and treat patients even as his own health failed. In his final years, his writing took on a different tone. He became more aware of the limits of human reason. While he remained a philosopher, he started to acknowledge that knowledge does not give you control over your fate. It does not protect you from the pain of exile or the reality of death. He died in 1037, at the age of 57, while traveling during yet another period of war. He left behind hundreds of works that would shape the future of science and philosophy for a millennium. When we look back at Avicenna, we see a man who did not wait for the perfect conditions to do his work. He did not have a stable home or a guaranteed income. He lived in a state of constant motion and uncertainty, but he carried his intellectual homeland with him wherever he went. His life is a reminder that greatness often comes from the struggle to find meaning in the middle of chaos. He did not just survive the instability of his time, he used it as the fuel for his genius. He showed us that while empires and cities might disappear, the ideas we build can endure long after we are gone. So, what do you think about Avicenna's approach to life? Do you think his relentless pace was the reason for his success, or did it ultimately rob him of a longer, more peaceful career? It is a fascinating question of whether we should aim for a life of balance or a life of intense, focused contribution, even if it costs us our health. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this story inspiring, please consider subscribing for more deep dives into the lives of the people who shaped our world. Thank you for watching.